is benchmarking its pay to rival firms. Either way, compensation a key issue for James Gorman, who takes over as CEO on Friday from John Mack. He'll have to try to figure out a way to pay his employees enough to keep them happy while not angering lawmakers and the general public in the process. And for an instant audit on this, Dan Schaefer, who's been with us all morning, filling in for Charles Payne from Schaefer Asset Management. And in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, this morning, financial analyst Yuri Mann is also here. What do you make of what Morgan is doing, Yuri? I mean, nobody's forcing them to do this, but much like Goldman Sachs, maybe not entirely like Goldman, they're restructuring the way they pay their people.
Yeah, what they're doing here is they're trying to bring their compensation in line with other banks, and it's really it's a little bit of a PR message here. You know, people have looked at Morgan Stanley and they've said, hey, you haven't done as much in terms of bringing your compensation in line and deferring compensation as opposed to paying cash. Even Goldman has done some unique things from a PR perspective, like their pay per say for pay program, where the shareholders have a chance to vote on compensation, even though it's not a non-binding vote. Morgan Stanley just needs to do a little bit more here to bring its compensation in line.
The question becomes, as Yuri says, Dan, it is maybe a PR message being sent by Morgan Stanley, but what are the consequences, unintended or intended, of that message in terms of how Wall Street operates? Will people be paid differently, act differently, stay longer at firms? I mean, what are the consequences of these moves, first by Goldman, now by Morgan?
Well, I think the consequences are going to be to keep the people where they are and try to compensate them equally to the Wall Street firms that exist today, plus the hedge fund industry, because that's where some of the competition is going to.
So less movement, maybe.
Well, there's less firms around, and that's another big issue. You don't have a lot of firms of choice, so it's going to be the firm that pays the most and has the best compensation package. But if they start levelizing the playing field, then Morgan Stanley can come in with a package to keep some really good traders and really good money managers in the realm there, then I think that's good. And I think this public publicity about it is good outside for the shareholders and for the investors, but also for the people in the company, so that they know something down the road is coming that may be better than what they currently have.
All right, so that's one of the effects, apparently, of the crisis, is that Wall Street is going to be paid differently and not being necessarily forced to do so now, because these firms have, by and large, paid back their talk money. Yuri, what do you make of the AIG story? This lady, Anastasia Kelly, has a, that was really leading the charge there, threatening to quit if she didn't get paid, and she's apparently the only one that's actually following through on that threat. She's leaving. Any significance to that move, do you think?
Well, the severance package that was in place has not changed since the bailout of AIG. So people are going to be upset about the fact that she's getting millions of dollars as she walks away. The interesting thing about this story is all of us have been at companies where we talk to our colleagues about how we can protect our compensation, and that's exactly what she did here. She was advising some executives on how they could protect their rights to severance and their compensation.
Right.
And this is a public company and under a tremendous amount of scrutiny. So of course, her actions here could be seen as not in the best interest of the company, given that she's giving advice to executives on how to protect their compensation.
And it's not like she's just the run-of-the-mill, it's just somebody that you sit next to in a cubicle. I mean, she's the head lawyer, right, Dan? I mean, this could be trouble, no?
Well, it could be trouble, but remember, part of the problems that occurred was that contracts were broken over the last year in several different companies. And being an attorney, who she is, there's a severance package in place, and it's a contract. Now, in a capitalistic economy or a world, this is okay. She took the package, and she told others that this is a package that is viable, and it should hold up in law.
So for her package will probably hold up. But what about as Yuri says, the advice she's giving to other people?
Well, I don't know the advice that she's actually giving the other people, but lead by example. Here she goes. She's saying the contract is holding up. It was a contract written before all of this started. It's a severance package with big payout to me, and they need to stick by that.
Fine. Dan and Yuri, good to see both of you guys. So I know you guys will both be back later on this hour, but right now it's back over to Gavin to pick up the news from London.
Thanks, Colonel. That really is a fascinating story, isn't it? Okay, the new Bank of America CEO doesn't officially take his post until next week, but he is already dealing with the company's worst-performing business line. Incoming CEO Brian Moynihan is already in charge of credit cards as the head of consumer banking. As CEO, he needs to fix the unit.